Welcome to the Magic of Emotional Intelligence series. I am your host, Abiola Salami. On this series, we share emotional intelligence insights to enable career professionals, entrepreneurs, and politicians achieve peak performance in their space. On this episode, we shall be sharing insights with finance practitioners on how to apply empathy to achieve peak performance in their space. So if you're an accountant, if you're an auditor, if you are a banker, you will find the insights on this episode particularly useful to enable you achieve peak performance in your space. But before we get into it, let us go for a quick break. A finance officer is an executive responsible for managing the organization's finances. A chief finance officer is the C-level executive who is responsible for managing the overall organization's finances. Often, the CFO is the third in line of leadership after the CEO, the chief executive officer, and the COO, chief operating officer. The CFO ensures that the financial risks, planning and reporting are in order. Being a person overseeing the flow of money in an organization means you are supervising not just an important touch point, but a very sensitive one. Driving peak performance is not always directly proportional to having a heavy financial chest. It is really about using what you have to achieve your goals with proper people management. This is because when we check well, finances is not always the problem, but a symptom of the problem. You can throw money at a problem and you will end up having an expensive problem until you address the underlying issues. A performance-driven CFO should realize that finances is what blood is to the human body. It gives life to your organization. You must grasp the critical importance of managing the material resources alongside the human resources that requires it to function. Having high intelligence quotient will definitely get you the job as a CFO. But empathy enables you to make decisions that are in the overall best interest of the organization. Therefore, finance experts should pay attention to the following to ensure that you always deliver peak performance. Number one, deepen your organizational awareness. Organizational awareness is the very first element of emotional intelligence that CFOs must have if they want to drive peak performance. You want to understand how stakeholders commit to accountability. If you are new to the organization, you want to understand the historical antecedent of the organization, not just from the books that will show you figures, but also from your interaction with stakeholders in order to understand the behaviors responsible for the facts behind the figures documented in the books. Be careful to avoid judgment in your quest for understanding, though. This will guide your approach in making readily available and accessible information to all stakeholders. Accountability is a trust-building approach because the CFO is showing all and sundry that there is nothing to hide and that financial records can be interrogated. From the boardroom to the lower echelons of your organization, the message of accountability boosts confidence. When people realize that their financial interest within the organization is well handled, they allow themselves to focus more on their own part of the bargain, which is doubling down on their deliverables. Effective bookkeeping enhances transparency, which is key to establishing this desired ecosystem, and it is something finance officers must have at the back of their minds. Number two, adopt the best-suited financial model. Achievement orientation, which is one of the features of emotional intelligence, informs the CFO on what financial model is most appropriate for the organization. There are many examples of financial models: the three-statement model, the discount cash flow model, the merger model, the initial public offering model, leveraged buyout model, different kinds of model. The critical thing is, all these models have their own distinct nuances, and it is the job of the CFO to advise the organization on which one to adopt. This is very important because a financial model should reflect the consensus within the organization. It should also align with the overarching objectives of your organization. Number 3, encouraging synergy with departmental heads. You see, every CFO and every finance officer should work directly with people from other departments. Especially every CFO needs to work directly with the heads of departments to ensure that they are in line with the strategic objectives of the organization. CFOs scrutinize every request for funds by department. You determine how viable or not intended acquisitions are, and you know how best to optimize the income generated by the department. By effectively acting as a nexus between the boardroom and the departments, CFOs use teamwork as an emotionally intelligent tool to diffuse tension and effectively manage those intra-organizational relationships. Number 4, managing consensus amongst external stakeholders. As a CFO, you don't just manage relationships within the organization. Also, you manage relationships outside the organization. Some of the tasks of CFOs must constantly undertake is selling the viability of the organization to potential investors, ensuring compliance with regulatory authorities, negotiating profitable third-party deals on behalf of the organization, ensuring that the pricing model of the organization's products and services corroborates with economic realities, ensuring that your organization is competitive given the industry it operates in, and ensuring that the financial goals of your organization are factored into every transaction the business is going into. These interactions also come with a plethora of thoughts, some approaches and interests, but a CFO with emotional intelligence knows just how to deploy conflict management to steady the ship. These exogenous players are very important because they do affect the internal environment of your organization, and consequently, they affect the performance levels of your organization. For example, when the shares of an organization tanks, the organization may be forced to downsize, to cut salaries, and all this will negatively affect performance. Number 5, promoting competitive compensation. Chief finance officers work with human resource managers to set competitive emoluments for the staff members. Now, taking into account many factors such as the financial buoyancy of the organization, the skill level of the worker, the industry rates, overtime fees, allowances like housing, health, holidays, and a lot of other allowances. The CFO must ensure that the financial compensation is adequate to motivate staff members to do their jobs well. You see, when employees feel as though they are earning slave wages, they tend to do the bare minimum. So both you as CFO and the human resource officer must be emotionally intelligent enough to know self-preservation is one of the strongest instincts of human beings, and that empathy puts the decision on emolument in perspective. Once there's a seeming fear of income not being enough to cater for primary needs, by default, most people divide their attention between their principal assignments in the workplace and other activities that they believe will augment such income. Number 6, using boardroom advisory and advocacy for improved efficiency. As a C-level executive, a chief finance officer should realize everything rises and falls on leadership. By providing aspirational leadership in the area of your core competence, as CFO, you contribute your quota to the bottom line. The boardroom represents the highest level of leadership in any organization, and decisions that are taken in there can either make or mar the fortunes of the organization. It is therefore your core responsibility as a chief finance officer to be the voice of reason in the room where there is a tendency to be a plethora of inflated egos. Most ideas may appear wonderful on paper, but in practice, they are not consistent with the vision of the organization, they are not viable, or the organization simply doesn't have the war chest to fund it. Many great organizations have been ruined by white elephants projects that were not quickly nipped in the bud. The chief finance officer's job description should not include being a praise singer or being someone that rubber stamps everything to the chief executive officer or other leaders. You should be able to enforce the agreed internal financial controls. Number 7, dismantle financial bureaucracy. One of the things that stifle high performance in organization is the lack of timely flow of funds. There is a popular Nigerian saying that time na money. What that colloquial expression suggests is if time is not well managed or things are not executed when they are supposed to be, it could have huge financial consequences. Chief finance officers should have a fiscal agenda where the revenue and expenditure is used to further the interest of the organization they serve. Most importantly, they should apply emotional intelligence to determine the optimum distribution of fiscal influence within the organization. No one person or department should accrue an inordinate amount of power at the expense of the smooth running of the organization. When financial requests are made, so long as such requests follow the appropriate channels and are within the ambit of the fiscal playbook of your organization, the chief finance officer should ensure that funds are disbursed promptly. A typical example is when a CFO is not agile with computing monthly compensation for workers and getting approval on time. It may result in late payments of salaries and cause avoidable disenchantment within the workforce. Digitization is a sure strategy to achieving this. Number 8, decentralizing financial controls. This is similar to dismantling financial bureaucracy, but it is quite different. When you dismantle financial democracy, it speaks to an organization-wide approach to fiscal control, which is dealing with the bottlenecks that mitigate proper allocation and distribution of financial resources. But decentralization of financial controls is about the CFO devolving certain powers that you have to, say, heads of departments so that they can make certain financial decisions. For example, a CFO can allow heads of departments to sign up an expense that is perhaps less than $1,000, while those above that amount must be approved directly by the CFO. It's almost akin to allowing them have a petty cash book for miscellaneous expenses. CFOs should exercise a healthy amount of self-control so that you are not overbearing or extravagant with financial resources at your disposal. Number 9, collaboration with COO to optimize the production process. You see, to achieve peak performance in your organization, you, as the chief finance officer, must work pari passu with the chief operating officer, in particular, to understudy and possibly understand the entire production process. This is because at one extreme, a production process can be financially intensive, and at another extreme, it could be labor intensive. So the CFO should work with the COO to ascertain a most appropriate midpoint that can move the performance needle as well as the profitability needle. Low performance is not always a function of incompetent staff members, but a dysfunction of production process at times. Again, tech will play a great part in achieving this, and the ability to adapt to new ideas is a signature of emotionally intelligent CFOs. Finally, number 10, apply global best practice. Chief finance officers should always have a positive outlook for better ways of discharging their duties from beyond the organizations they serve, especially with using data-driven decision models, risk management, information management, people management, product management, stakeholder management, and other things that you can leverage. CFOs must ensure that their approach is malleable and that the organization is not sabotaged by its own financial policies. All this have a direct bearing on productivity and performance because financial strategies should be centered on internal stakeholders, and once these strategies outlive their usefulness, it behoves of the CFO to do the needful. Thank you for watching this episode. We've been discussing how CFOs and other finance officers can apply emotional intelligence to achieve peak performance in their space. You can equip yourself and your team some more for peak performance by getting my new book, The Magic of Emotional Intelligence. Visit our website to get your copies. You can also follow me at Abiola Champ on all social media platforms. For coaching, training, speaking, and collaboration inquiries, please send an email to hello@abiolachamp.com. Till I see you on the next episode, keep rocking your world like a champion.